A governmental agency has a specific set of assigned activities to pursue, rather than a general goal to maximize. Governmental agencies are generally authorized to carry on processes rather than to achieve results. Given categorical mandates and the law of diminishing returns, it is virtually inevitable that governmental agencies would eventually end up doing things which seem irrational as isolated decisions. The aggrandizement familiar in all kinds of human activities, from the dressing of babies to the spread of multinational corporations, applies as well to governmental agencies. But where other expansions are constrained not only by budget limits, but also by incremental returns from other lines of activity, governmental agencies with mandated activities have every incentive to push those particular activities as far as politically possible, even into regions of negative returns to society. This is especially apparent in preventive activities, designed to contain various evils. As those evils are successively reduced, either by the agency's own activity or by other technological or social developments, the agency must then apply more activity per residual unit of evil just in order to maintain its current employment and appropriations level. If the agency is supposed to fight discrimination against minorities, it must successively expand its concept of what constitutes discrimination and what constitutes a minority. Urgent tasks, such as securing basic civil rights for blacks, ultimately give way to activities designed to get equal numbers of cheerleaders for girls' high school athletic teams. A non-governmental organization, such as the March of Dimes, could, as it did after conquering polio, turn its attention to other serious diseases. But if it had a government mandate strictly limited to polio, it would have little choice but to continue into such activities as writing the history of polio, collecting old polio posters, etc., while children were still dying from birth defects or other maladies. The point here is not that the leaders of the March of Dimes were either more intelligent or morally superior to the leaders of government agencies. The point is that a non-governmental organization subject to feedback from donors or customers has incentives and constraints that lead to institutional decisions more attuned to rational social trade-offs. More diversified government agencies, such as the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, have opportunities to change the internal mixture of its activities in response to changing social priorities, but only to the extent that the HEW leadership is in a position to impose agency-wide considerations on the warring principalities under its nominal control. By the same token, private organizations supported by a narrow constituency, such as the NAACP Legal Defense Fund supported by affluent white liberals, may pursue certain activities well into the region of diminishing returns from the viewpoint of its ostensible beneficiaries, blacks, or the society at large, however important its historic mission may have been in the past. In short, it is not the political versus the private control of organizations which is crucial. It is the scope of the organization's mandate, and what that implies about its likelihood of pursuing some activity past the point of negative social returns. The safeguards required for the use of massive government power and huge sums of government money often confine the decision-maker's discretion to a given line of activity, and contain numerous rules within that activity. Moreover, because taxpayers cannot monitor numerous government agencies the way donors, customers, or family members monitor fewer and closer activities, the feedback to non-governmental organizations is usually faster and more effective in diverting their efforts into new areas, as the most urgent needs in the original area are met. Bureaucracies, by definition, are controlled by administrative or political decisions, not by incentives and constraints communicated through market price fluctuations. While an ordinary business enterprise is constrained to keep its costs of production below the value of the output to the consumer, and has incentives to keep it as far below as possible, such incentives and constraints are not merely absent in a bureaucracy, but are replaced by other incentives and constraints tending in the opposite direction. The rank and pay of a bureaucrat is determined by his degree of responsibility, in categories documentable to third parties judging a process rather than a result. He is paid by how many people he manages and how much money he administers. Overstaffing, needless paperwork, and unnecessary delays may be such only relative to social purposes, not relative to the incentives established. Every needless employee is a reason for his superior to get a higher salary. So is every wasted expenditure, and every unnecessary delay preserves someone's job. The more channels the citizen has to go through, the more work is generated for the organization. For a bureaucrat assigned a given task, result, the incentive is to require as many people and as much money as possible to achieve that result. The simple fact that governments are run by human beings with the normal human desire for personal well-being and individual or institutional aggrandizement must be insisted upon only because of a long intellectual tradition of implicitly treating government as a special exception to such incentives and constraints. What is politically possible depends upon how visible his costs are, not their magnitude in relation to the value of the result. Moreover, the bureaucracy can expand the demand for its services by simply pricing them below cost. There is no such thing as an objective, quantifiable need for anything. When the price is lower, a larger quantity is demanded. Profit and loss constraints mean that a private business can expand its sales this way only as long as its price covers its costs of production. A government bureaucracy, which can dispense its goods or services below cost, including at zero price in some cases, can always demonstrate a large need for its output, and therefore a justification for a large staff and budget. It has been claimed that bureaucratization in general cannot proceed to lengths that are counterproductive, either in terms of organizational efficiency or their limitations on individual freedom in a democratic country. Otherwise, a bureaucracy-wrecking party could be elected, with the support of every citizen who believed he was paying more to support wasteful bureaus than he was receiving from those minorities serving bureaus that benefited him directly. This would be true if knowledge were costless. But one cannot destroy bureaucracy in general, but only specific and highly disparate bureaucracies. For a citizen attack on wasteful bureaus to succeed requires knowledge of the point at which benefit turns to waste or counterproductive activity. As long as bureaucratic waste or restriction stays within broad limits and shields itself from specific detection, it may persist indefinitely, despite its incremental costs exceeding its incremental benefits, as the voters would judge these if they knew. Much complaint about bureaucratic inefficiency or stupidity presupposes that bureaucrats are pursuing the goals stated in the preambles to the legislation authorizing their existence, rather than responding to the incentives created in the details of that legislation. Not even physical or engineering efficiency can be calculated without first defining a goal. Where bureaucrats are pursuing their own individual or organizational goals, they are hardly being inefficient, much less stupid, in terms of other goals that other people wish they were pursuing. This is not merely a matter of verbal fastidiousness, but of practical policy. Replacing the allegedly inefficient or stupid people with more intelligent people, or people with a record of efficiency in private industry, could not be relied upon to improve the implementation of the social policy described in preambles, as long as the structure of incentives and constraints remains the same.